Hey everybody, welcome back to Today in Tech. Once again, still looking for a host. I am Michael Simon from Macworld, joined by Ken Mingus from Computer World, and today we are talking about the M2 MacBook Air, better known as the good one.
The Goldilocks one, I think I saw in a famous publication. That's the
Yes, we
Goldilocks moment.
we went back and forth on the headline for that, but that's kind of what it is. Like it's for
Just
most
right.
people, yeah, for most people, it's just right. I mean, it's got what most people are looking for in a laptop. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I have a 14-inch Pro, Ken. I think you have the 16-inch
I've got
Pro.
the 16, yeah.
So if you want that big screen, the 16-inch screen, I mean that's your option.
Yeah.
It's 16 is significantly bigger than 13.6. It doesn't seem like much, but it's a lot. If I was buying the 14-inch Pro right now, I would probably get the 13-inch Air.
You'd get the Air, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess we should note for people that, pre-orders or orders started last week. It officially arrives on Friday, tomorrow, July 15th.
Yeah, you're not going to get it tomorrow unless you ordered it already.
Exactly. And of course, with supply chain issues and the popularity, I think that's not a surprise that this would be a very popular
No, not at all.
laptop at all. And
It's all right, so let's just break it down. Like, so we reviewed it. We'll start from the outside.
yeah.
It's completely different, yet also very familiar. So the old Air design, which really hadn't changed all that much from 2010 when it came out?
The original one came out in '08.
Oh, wait, okay.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed much. It hadn't changed much.
Right.
So you had that iconic wedge design.
wedge.
Steve Jobs pulled it out of the inter-office envelope on stage, and it was that big moment. That design. So when you looked at it, and it was like razor thin on the edges, tapered, so it was a little bit thicker in the inside for some, the internal parts and some heat dissipation. That design is gone. I don't know how I feel about that, because right now, if you look at the MacBook Air, it looks like a MacBook Pro.
A
It looks like
Pro.
just another Apple laptop, which, it's nice.
Yeah.
That nothing to take away from its design, but the Air was different. It was iconic. It was unique to itself.
I think I agree with you, Michael. I think in terms of the look, especially, the Air sort of reached beyond what it was in terms of its design. I mean, it was a very basic, in some ways, stripped down laptop, but the design is what made it special.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I know we've got new colors, and I do like that midnight color, and even the
I'm sure that'll come to other devices.
I hope so.
With the next update.
Yeah, but the one thing that really sort of set the Air apart was the design, and this one really adopts the basic I guess design language that Apple's using now. Again, aside from the colors,
yeah,
it's nice, it's functional.
It's a very nice laptop, but if you put it next to a 14-inch Pro, for example, you can see the difference. It's thinner, it's smaller, but in for all intents and purposes, it could be the 13-inch Pro could be this model. There's very little about it that's not visually a 14-inch Pro. Obviously the ports are different and the process. We'll get into all that in a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you look at it on a table, 13.6-inch MacBook Air, 14-inch MacBook Pro, 16-inch MacBook Pro, they just look like bigger versions of each other. Now, if you would have done that with the M1 model, you could pick out the MacBook Air immediately.
Yeah.
And, so it really lost its character. And I don't really understand. I don't know why. Like, why couldn't Apple have done both? Kept the Air being, different and unique, and also given it all the things that we wanted.
I know this is sort of random, but it's interesting that this arrives the same week that Apple and Johnny Ive have officially sort of parted ways.
Sure.
And Johnny was so instrumental in so many ways to a lot of the design, directions that Apple took over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So, he's on his, they'll both be very,
we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know how much Johnny Ive how much input Johnny Ive had on these latest MacBooks.
And we probably never will know.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah.
My guess is some, but not nearly as much as it used to. And, you don't have to look any further than the fact that it has a bunch of ports. The Pro has a bunch of ports to see that, other people had input. Because, Johnny Ive wanted everything, minimal everything, which is one of the problems with the prior MacBook Pro models, is that it lost the HDMI port, it lost the SD card reader, it lost MagSafe, the things that, that made it Pro.
Right.
So all those things are back now without really sacrificing much of what makes the Pro, when the 14-inch Pro came out, it was a logical design aesthetic upgrade.
Yeah.
It got some slimmer bezels, it got the notch, it got, but it looked, like an evolution of the prior model. This MacBook Air is completely different and in more of a homogenized way. It's just, it's just a bit of a bummer. Like, it's not like it's weird because it's a nice laptop. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's nice, really nice, but it's not the unique laptop that we're used to.
One of the things is I was looking at a variety of reviews today, not only on Macworld, but of course, everybody that has one of these as an early model to look at and review has their reviews up now. And I was surprised at the number of times people said that just when you first take it out and look at it, it almost looks like an iPad Pro. It's it's so thin, but it's got that sort of square shape and everything that if you were just to sort of glance at it, you might think of it as an iPad Pro. And I thought that was very telling in terms of losing the form, which goes back to the point you're making, that it's certainly in line with everything else Apple is selling now, but in making that decision, Apple loses some of the uniqueness, I think, that the Air kind of carried with it over the last 14 years. That said, everybody that I've read so far seems to think this is a phenomenal.
It is
a phenomenal laptop. Not perfect, there's some quibbles, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But that in terms of overall price, performance, design, screen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that, as you said early on, it will fit the needs of probably 80 or 90% of, laptop users, what they want.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is more expensive. So let's get into. We'll start with the price. So the old one's $999. Apple still sells it. So that's the M1 that has the old design. So you're getting thicker bezels, 13.3-inch screen. It's a little bit smaller.
In the older one.
In the older one, the M1 model. And you're not getting MagSafe. Those are the main differences between this and obviously the M2 chip. Those are the main differences between this one and the M2. But it's $200 more for the M2. So you're, that's 20%. That's not peanuts. You might say, oh, well, it's the cost of a RAM upgrade, but it's $200 is significant when you're in that end of the pool.
Yeah, exactly. At the low end of the pool, when you're talking a 20% bump, yes, you're getting the new chip and you're getting MagSafe and the everything else. But I would think that this is the one part of Apple's laptop ecosystem where people are price sensitive. That M1 may start to look pretty nice when they really sit down and compare.
Well, when you think about, all right, so what are you getting for your money? Apple released the M2 MacBook Pro, 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the price is the same. So It's not the chip. Slightly bigger, slightly better screen. It's got that liquid retina with, they say a billion colors versus millions of colors. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't think
your eye's not going to notice a difference.
No. The design is the big thing. So it's much slimmer bezels, and you have the notch at the top. The keyboard's the same. Touch ID is the same. SSD is mostly the same, except for the base. So if you buy the $1199 base model, you're getting a slower SSD because Apple's using a single 256 gigabyte SSD chip rather than 228 gigabyte SSD chips, which is in the M1 model. So read and write speeds are up to 50% slower, according to some benchmarks. Now, caveat, you probably won't really notice, certainly not that slow. But it's something to consider because, if you buy the M1 256, you're getting a faster SSD. It's just the way it is.
While we're on the SSD, let me ask you this, because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, trying to figure out what would be the ideal configuration. And we said certainly, you'd want to think about bumping the RAM from 8 to 16 or even 24 if you really want to go that way. Based on the fact that the 256 gig SSD is slower than the 512 or the 1 terabyte, would you also now recommend that people, as we're saying this, you recommend they go up to 512 at least?
Well, the 1499 model, I think, is the one to get. So what you're getting in that's different. A 512 gigabyte hard drive. So that's one, and it's faster. So it's 256 gig chips. So it's quicker. You're getting a better M2 chip. So the base model has an M2 chip with an 8-core GPU. The step-up model for another $300 has a 10-core GPU. And in our testing, it's 25% or so. So, it's a better GPU. And one other little thing is you're getting a 35-watt 2-port power adapter, which Apple sells for, I think, $60. And you can I think you can spend a little bit more when you buy the base model and get it too. But you're getting, so that's an upgrade too. You put all that together, I think it's worth it. The $300 difference, better chip, better hard drive, more storage, double the storage, and a better power adapter. I'm on board with that.
But you're still with the 1499 model, you're still getting 8 gigs of RAM, right?
Yeah. So then you'd have to add another $200 to get it to
1699 to get it.
Yeah, 1700. And then you're $300 away from the 14-inch Pro. So Apple's very, very smart with that stuff.
Yeah.
As you pile on the features that you kind of need, but I think that's still $300, and I think that's still worth the difference. So that's the model I would get if I didn't have a 14-inch Pro that I bought 6 months ago, I'd buy that. 512.
Yep.
Yeah. 512 gigabyte, 16 gigs of RAM, the better M2 for $1,700. That's what I would get. I might wait a month to get it for $100 off because there will be sales on them. Like, for example, the MacBook Pro right now is $200 off on Amazon. Like, if you wait a couple weeks to a month and a half, depending on supply chain stuff, you'll get deals. And I think at $1,550, say, that's very appealing. If you can get Amazon, Costco, Best Buy, Target, not Target, Amazon, Costco, Best Buy, they all run routine sales on the MacBooks.
Well, especially right before school starts, I would think there might be some unofficial back to school things.
Sure.
It's funny because I had priced it out, and for the record, I'm not buying one. I am very happy with my 16-inch MacBook Pro, though I really do like the looks.
Well, you would be very cramped.
Yeah.
Once 13, it would feel like you're going down to a postage stamp. Yeah,
it's hard to go back down. But when I priced it out, I also went with the 1499, and I bumped the RAM to 24 gigs, and
24 is fine. 16 is, 24 is good. 16 is fine.
I think 16 is fine. 24 is probably more than you need. But again, if you're buying something like this and thinking 3 to 5 years down the road, and these things,
you get that now you're at $1,899. Because that's another $200.
Yeah.
So then you're getting really close to that 14-inch Pro, which starts at 16 gigs of RAM. So.
But then you're looking at a larger laptop that's heavier. If portability is an issue, it
is heavier. It's a little bit bigger, not a ton, but a little bit.
Well, and it's surprising because with the thinner bezels, when you think about a 13 quote unquote 13-inch screen, it's 13.6 inches, which is less than half an inch away from a 14-inch model. Right. So if you're thinking between a 14 and a 13.6, I think that's a difference without a distinction.
It is. I went from the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which is a 13.3 inch. To the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and I was very surprised at just how much more screen it felt like I had. Part of it is the design, so the bezels are smaller, so it's an optical illusion thing. But the way Apple made the screen, so the notch is higher, so the screen's a little bit higher, and you get all that space below the notch that you had before. So it feels even bigger. You're not getting that menu bar is not usable space, so to speak. But you're getting, so by pushing the menu bar up a little bit higher and pushing the 16 by 9 below that, it's not 16 by 9. I don't know why I said that. Whatever the dimensions are, you're
Yeah.
getting you're getting it feels like more screen than even it is. And the 14 it's a big jump, even from 13.3 to 13.6. You're going to feel that extra quarter of an inch or third of an inch.
Well, and again, though, if that's for, I think at this point, when you're really talking about the 14 and 16, you really are looking at buyers who need to use these things as workhorses. I mean, for, real work, video
Yeah.
editing, graphics,
But
things like that.
we have them and we're not doing any of that.
Well, I'm not saying you can't overbuy, but if you're a business user looking to decide between the various tiers, I mean, you might want to you might be able to get a MacBook Air if you want to be on the go and you don't mind losing some time crunching some video when you're on the road. It's portable. It does what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Now, just correct me if I'm wrong. The Air does not have a fan, right?
Right. No
Yeah.
fans, no vents. It's completely and totally silent.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of benchmarks comparing it to the M2 MacBook Pro, which does have a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And if you crank it, you'll see a 5% ish difference because the Air's CPU will throttle when it gets to a specific temperature, whatever that temperature is. Whereas the Pro will turn on its fans and be able to run longer at higher speeds. But you really have to push it
Okay.
to get there. I have the 14-inch Pro. I don't think I've ever heard the fan go on.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
I do, I
16.
do Photoshop work and stuff, and I always have a million tabs open in Windows and things, and I don't think I've ever heard it come on. Maybe once, maybe. So, they're very efficient. They're very powerful chips that can handle more than the workload that you think that it can. It's
Yeah.
not like the old Intel chips where you open up Chrome and it
Well,
starts
it's
whirring. Yeah.
funny you should mention that because I think it was, I don't know if it was the review you did on Macworld or one of the other ones, but whoever was writing said that, and I'm presuming this is one of the models that I think had 8 gigs. And they had whoever it was, the reviewer had opened up Chrome and said that they did not notice things start to bog down until they had like either 75 or 100 tabs in
Yeah.
Chrome. If you can keep 75 tabs in Chrome open at once without your computer completely freaking out, then you're doing something right, which is a testament to the M2,
Sure.
Yeah. I'm curious. I did not track last week when these things went on sale. Was there a backlog pretty quickly? Did they seem to sell out pretty fast? At least.
The midnight model was pushed back almost immediately.
Okay.
Which isn't a surprise.
Yeah.
But most of them are like August, or they were August, maybe.
Yeah, when I checked this morning, anything you do, where you're looking at the first week of August. Probably.
So it's still okay. So yeah, so it was almost immediately the midnight got pushed to August, and then over the course of the next day or so, particularly the higher configurations, there was a weird quirk where, I think it was over the weekend, I wrote an article that if you bought 16 gigs of RAM, you actually got it quicker than 8 gigs of RAM. Like there was this weird thing where the higher RAM configurations were shipping like a week earlier. But it's basically August at this point. And I'm sure it's even like late August for some models now because, supply chain is a real issue. It still is, and it's going to be for a while. Like we read articles every day about, speculative, but about the iPhone 14 and how Apple's having a hard time getting displays and a hard time getting this chip and that chip. And, it's a real issue that all these companies have to deal with. And we'll see. Apple has its quarterly results, I think, in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see how this is affecting sales now.
It's interesting. As I recall, I don't remember the MacBook Pro, the M2 MacBook Pro, selling out or being pushed back as quickly. I think there might have been some delays early on, but I think the assumption is everybody was waiting for the Air to show up.
Yeah, I don't even know who's right. I don't know what the volume of purchasing on that was because there's not a lot of reason to buy it.
Yeah.
Particularly when the Air was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks away at the time. There wasn't why would you rush to buy that unless you're, I don't know, either A, desperate, or B, you're just like a tech reviewer and you didn't get it from Apple and you want to review it. Other than that, I don't know I just don't know why you would need it. Why you would want it. I don't get it. I don't understand why you would rush to buy it. How about that?
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So I think that's a case of just the volume of ordering just wasn't there.
Yeah. So what else we need to know about the M2? I know there've been some dings about the webcam. It's not bad, 1080p.
Yeah, Jason didn't like. So Jason Cross, our reviewer, I read, it's upgraded. How about that? So it goes from 720 to 1080p. So it's definitely an upgrade from what it was, but it was terrible before. Now it's like less terrible, but it's still not great. And that continuity camera feature that's coming out with macOS Ventura, that's the thing that Apple is going to want you to use now, because it's very cool. So you can use your iPhone camera, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, much
no
better.
Setup, no wires, no setup, no anything. You just pop it on a stand of some sort, and your Mac will just use that as your camera. And I mean that's cool, but it's a workaround. It's still a workaround. Like that. It would be nice if they found a way to put the iPhone camera, which is great, into a Mac. I mean, we
got the notch. They ought to be able to do it.
Yeah, they have the notch. We talked about it. So you can talk about the thickness of the screen, but the studio display is plenty thick, and that still doesn't have one. So it's a conscious decision to not put a real high-end top level webcam inside of a Mac. And it's a little frustrating. So we got it's 2022 and we got our first 1080p webcam in a MacBook, and we're supposed to cheer for that? Like, I don't think so.
When did I was going to say 2012 called, and once it's cutting edge.
Yeah, right. It's been
really right. We're talking about 10-year-old technology at this point. Maybe not to the point that I know the camera pieces have been shrunken down. You might not have been able to get a 1080p camera this size in a laptop 10 years ago, but the visuals are what matter.
I mean, is anyone going to complain if they make the screen 2 millimeters thicker to fit a better webcam in it? I don't think so.
No, not in 2022 when the whole world is.
I don't think so. Right. This virtual conferencing stuff, it's not going away.
Yeah.
So that's one issue.
But battery life is good.
Battery life is great. It's been great. The M2s have fantastic battery life. All of the laptops have great battery life. We knew that, because of the A series chips on the iPhones and iPads. They're great. And so we knew the power efficiency on the MacBooks was going to be great. This one's even like a little bit better than it was. It will last all day, your entire workday. Yeah. Take it on the road with you. If you put it in standby, close the cover, you're going to lose nothing. Jason, he wrote he'll sit down and use it for an hour and it doesn't even budge. It goes to 99%. And I can attest to that. The battery life's fantastic. I can leave mine unplugged for a day and a half doing work, and it's fine. So battery life's great. Chip is an improvement. It's not a massive improvement, but it's an improvement over the M1. And the design is nice. It's just
not unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So somebody wrote, just real quick, I just got this message. So this guy says, I have a MacBook Pro, but the worst issue is you cannot connect any third-party screen to it with an HDMI cable. You need to get a specific converter. Windows laptops half the price of Pro don't have the issue. Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, I have, I guess, a newer monitor with HDMI hooked up to my Pro right now, and it works fine. Maybe there are some issues.
I did see somewhere that this particular Air will only run one external.
Well, the Air, yes. This guy says he has a Pro, but yeah, the Air, just like the M1s, it'll power one external display through DisplayPort. That's just the way it is.
Yeah,
that's a limitation of those M1 laptops. The Pros can do, I think, 4. And the Studio can do the 6 or something, I forget. Yeah. But or 4K. Maybe the Pros could do one 4K and a couple 1080s, and the Studio can do like 4 4Ks. I forget. But hey, listen, if you want 2 external monitors, what the hell are you buying a MacBook Air for? Like clearly you have higher end computing needs than an Air. So that's the complaint that I'm not really on board with. This particular issue that this guy or this person says, I mean, okay, all right. At least we have an HDMI port on the Pro. Like we didn't have that forever. At least we have an SD card reader now on the Pro. People are going to bring up things like that all the time. Like it's true. Windows laptops have USB-A. They have more ports. They have all that is true. They have Ethernet, some of them built into it. All that's true. If that's the stuff that you care about, then Apple's just going to say goodbye to you because that's not coming back. Apple doesn't care.
Yeah,
that's just the way. That's the way they are. They have proprietary stuff. They make design decisions without really necessarily looking at like niche issues. They look at the market as a whole. Remember, they moved to USB-C on the MacBook in 2012. And people were like, what the heck is this? Because we have one port and I have nothing that goes with it. They didn't care. They took away the floppy drive in the iMac in 1998. Like Apple does these things. Sometimes it moves the industry forward. Sometimes it takes a decade. The MacBook Pro, the 12-inch MacBook was way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Apple shouldn't have released that then. It was just too early for its time.
It did sort of feel like it was a little early because people just quite know what to do with it.
Right. Even people who were on the cutting or so edge, they just weren't enough USB-C peripherals and adapters and things at the time that were affordable to work. But that's the Apple way. That's how they do things. They move fast and they break stuff. And they don't really care who gets upset about it. They are listening more than they have been.
As witnessed by the return of ports on the Pro models. Yes, exactly.
And MagSafe is back now on well, except for the MacBook Pro, all of the laptops except for the 13-inch Pro. So that's a plus. The MacBook Pro is SD card reader.
Well, remember the keyboard issue? Remember the horrible butterfly keyboard?
Right.
People ranted and raved and screamed about that for 3, 4, 5 years, and finally Apple's like, "Oh, we've got a new keyboard," which is basically returning to the 2010 keyboard, and everybody was happy. So Apple does respond when it's clearly made some design choices that were not necessarily the best.
Yeah, it should be noted that the keyboard is fantastic on all of Apple's laptops. Like, yes, it was a mea culpa of sorts, but it's really great. Yeah. Like, there's nothing. I have never used a better laptop keyboard. It's excellent.
Yeah. Hey, question. I know our time is running short, but before we wrap up, all right. So we've got this is the latest M2 laptop. Do we expect any more M2 models or anything else out this year?
Maybe.
I know you've sort of assumed it might be 23, especially for the Pro models, since they haven't been out for a year yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on supply chain stuff. I think the next one we're going to get, if anything, is the Mini. So the Mac Mini is one of 2 Macs that still have an Intel processor. They still sell that. I don't know, what is it, $800, I think, or something. I forget the price of it, but they still sell an Intel model, which you'd be out of your mind to buy right now. But regardless of that, it speaks to the fact that Apple hasn't given us a high-end Mac Mini. We have a low-end M1 Mac Mini. We're still waiting for that now it'll be an M2 Pro or M2 Max or whatever it is.
Right.
Probably a Pro. So the Studio has an M2 Max, M1 Max, sorry. The Mac Studio has an M1 Max and an M1 Ultra. The iMac has an M1. The Mac Mini has an M1. There's a space there for that M1, now M2 Pro processor, which is, $1,500 or something, $1,500. And, isn't quite as high end as the Studio, isn't quite as low end as the iMac or the Mac Mini, and, fits right in that thing. I don't know where it is. It's very odd that they didn't release that last cycle, an M1 Pro.
I wonder if maybe that is actually supply chain related. Maybe they just had to prioritize certain models depending on what chips they could get hold of, and they just sort of let that one slide.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know how many people are buying Mac Minis anymore. Like the Mac Studio makes sense because it's more high end. So if you're gonna let one go for a while, I guess that's the one, because the volume of people looking for a high end, but not too high end desktop is probably pretty small in 2022. People buy laptops. That's the big market.
That's a niche within a niche. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So your final verdict on the M2?
I mean, it's great. Yeah, go get it.
Is it the Goldilocks? It really is just
It's,
right, for
I
most.
mean, if anybody was asking me for advice, if they said I have $1,500, what should I get? There's no question.
Yeah.
If they said, well, I'm really on a budget, I got like, maybe 1,000, get the M1 Air.
Okay.
And that's
yeah.
it. Those are my recommendations. If you have a couple thousand, either max out the Air or look at that 14-inch Pro, whichever direction you want to go in. Because once you start getting in that 1,800 to 2,000 range, you got options.
And you're pushing up into pro range.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with loading with maxing out an Air for like, give it like a terabyte of storage, 24 gigs of RAM. That's cool. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I got no problem with that.
That would be a hell of a machine. Get it in midnight, and you've got the, you're on top of the pile for a while, at least for the next few years. All right. I agree with you, Michael, and I'm glad we were able to do this though. And so these things will arrive tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be hearing from real world users as opposed to reviewers over the next few weeks, and we'll find out if there's any kinks or anything that Apple missed in the.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very popular.
I think that's clear. Okay, I guess we should probably wrap it up for this week. To you who've been watching us, thanks for watching. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the online here below. We'll try to get back to you with any answers we might be able to come up with. If you like the video, please like it and subscribe to us so you'll know when we're doing more of these things. And I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, sir.